If you were playing a video game, like one of those incredibly dense, immersive role-playing games, there's always that pivotal moment right at the beginning.
Oh, the character creation screen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You're just staring at this character creation screen, and you're handed this, like, very limited pool of skill
And
points.
you have to decide your whole life right there.
Right. You have to decide right then and there how to allocate them. You're basically locking in the architecture of your entire experience for the next 100 hours.
Right. Like, do you dump all your points into strength so you can just smash through walls?
Exactly. Or, do you heavily invest in charisma so you can talk your way out of trouble? Or maybe like intelligence to see hidden paths. But I want you, the listener, to just imagine for a second that you could pull up that exact same character creation screen in real life.
That is a wild thought experiment.
Right. But there's a catch. You only get to max out one single skill. Just one. But this one skill is, well, it's guaranteed to fundamentally, radically, and permanently upgrade every single other aspect of your existence. What are you picking?
I mean, you're essentially looking for the foundational code, you know,
Yeah.
like the master key that makes every other door easier to open.
Yeah, and it's so incredibly tempting to instinctively say something like confidence.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very common answer.
Honestly, if you asked me yesterday, I probably would have said confidence, because if you think about it, if you're deeply confident, your life changes immediately.
Yeah, you speak up in those high-stakes meetings or you walk into a room and make friends easily.
Right, you take massive creative risks because you aren't, like, paralyzed by the fear of bombing a job interview or looking foolish. And actually, I was reading through this fascinating conversation between two language educators, Noah and Maya, and Noah fell right into that same exact thought process.
Yeah, when presented with this concept, his immediate answer was confidence too.
Right, he viewed it as the ultimate life hack.
And the logic makes complete sense on the surface. Confidence is, it's the armor we desperately wish we were wearing when we're standing on the precipice of something terrifying.
Yeah, completely.
Noah specifically outlines how confidence acts as the engine for, well, learning a new language, networking, or just putting yourself out there. We live in a society that loudly rewards confidence, so naturally we assume it's the highest tier skill.
But then his co-host, Maya, just completely pulls the rug out from under him.
Oh, I love that part.
She essentially stops him and says, well, she's like, no, Noah, there is something running underneath confidence, something far more powerful. And the answer she reveals is, honestly, it's far less glamorous. It's not going to get you a standing ovation.
No, definitely not.
It's just self-discipline.
Yeah, the contrast between those two concepts is where this gets genuinely profound. Because confidence is inherently loud.
Yeah, it's very visible.
Exactly, it's visible. It's performative, often requiring an audience or like a specific social context to even manifest. But self-discipline is utterly quiet.
Right.
As Maya frames it in their discussion, discipline is the solitary mechanism that forces you to continue when you're exhausted, when the initial excitement has just evaporated, and, most crucially, when absolutely nobody is watching to give you credit.
Let's really look at this source material today, because this is where our deep dive takes a pretty sharp turn. I was reading through this transcript from the English with Ava show, and I mean, if you just glance at the cover, it presents itself as a highly functional everyday tool for non-native speakers to learn conversational English.
Yeah, it looks very straightforward on the surface.
Right, you have Noah and Maya chatting, you have a vocabulary teacher named Emma breaking down definitions, and they're just discussing daily routines.
It is dressed up in very unassuming clothing. It looks like a standard language acquisition exercise.
But the reality of what they have constructed here is a total Trojan horse of knowledge. It's like this wooden horse you're happily pulling into the gates of your mind under the guise of learning some English vocabulary.
I love that analogy.
But hidden inside the belly of this transcript, it's a highly sophisticated, step-by-step masterclass on human psychology, habit architecture, and hacking the resistance of our own brains to achieve long-term mastery.
And by using the framework of language learning, which, by the way, happens to be one of the most notoriously difficult, long-term, nonlinear skills a human can try to acquire, Noah and Maya are actually modeling the exact blueprint for behavioral change.
Yeah, they're dissecting the mechanics of why we routinely fail to execute our own ambitions.
Exactly, and providing the tools to override that failure.
So if we want to crack open this Trojan horse and actually extract the blueprint for self-discipline, I think we have to start by completely tearing down what self-discipline isn't.
Right, clearing the misconceptions first.
Because almost all of us constantly confuse discipline with its incredibly flashy, highly unreliable cousin, which is motivation.
Maya introduces a vivid analogy for this in the conversation. She argues that we need to view motivation purely as the weather.
The weather. Let's push on that. Because we treat motivation like a magical spell we cast on ourselves, but viewing it as weather completely shifts the locus of control.
It really does. Think about the nature of weather. Some days you wake up, pull back the curtains, and it's like 75 degrees and cloudless.
The birds are singing.
The birds are singing. You are suddenly flooded with this boundless, unearned surge of energy. On a day like that, you're entirely convinced you're going to master a new language, write a screenplay, clean your entire house, and, I don't know, meal prep for a month.
Yeah, I've had those mornings. They are amazing.
Right. That is motivation. It is an atmospheric condition. But the fundamental truth of weather is that it changes without your permission.
Yeah, it really does.
The very next morning, it might be 35 degrees, raining, and miserable. On those days, as Noah candidly admits in their chat, the only thing you want to do is pull the blankets over your head and stay in bed.
You don't wake up and dictate the barometric pressure of the sky.
Yes.
And you don't dictate the neurochemical weather of your brain on any given Tuesday.
No, you just experience it.
Which means relying on motivation is an incredibly dangerous strategy. Like, if your entire system for self-improvement requires a sunny day, what is your plan for the winter?
The danger is the waiting. The illusion of motivation convinces us that we simply need to wait for the perfect moment or the right feeling to execute our goals.
Which never comes.
Exactly. Maya draws a very sharp line in the sand here. She says motivation is the spark that helps us begin, but self-discipline is the engine that helps us continue.
The transcript gets incredibly specific about defining this engine, too. Noah defines self-discipline as the act of choosing what is important over what is easy.
That's a great definition.
And then Maya takes it a step further, defining it as the act of taking care of your future self.
That formulation, choosing importance over ease, is the dividing line between an emotional reaction and a systematic response. You are consciously deciding that the future iteration of you requires the effort you are making today.
If Maya says motivation is the weather, the swirling, unpredictable external force, then self-discipline has to be the house you build to survive it.
Well, that's a brilliant extension of the analogy.
Right, because a well-built house protects your ultimate goals regardless of what the sky is doing. If you have a solid roof of discipline, it genuinely does not matter if there's a thunderstorm outside and you feel emotionally terrible.
Right, you're still dry inside.
You are still moving forward, even if it's just an inch.
Let's examine the physics of that house for a second. A house doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It requires a foundation. It requires, load-bearing walls.
Lots of bricks.
Lots of bricks.
Yeah.
It doesn't rely on the sun to keep you warm. It relies on the structural integrity of the bricks you laid weeks, months, or years ago.
Yeah. When you operate solely on motivation, you haven't built anything. You are just standing in an open field, looking up at the clouds, desperately hoping it doesn't rain on your goals.
Listener, I really want you to run an audit on your own past projects for a second. Think about a time you launched a new endeavor with massive enthusiasm. You bought the expensive running shoes or, downloaded the premium language app or bought the domain name for your new business.
Running on pure sunshine.
Exactly. You were running on pure sunshine. What happened 3 weeks later? The weather changed, work got stressful, you got a cold. The initial novelty wore off. Did you abandon the project? If you did, you were living in the field.
Noah calls out this exact phenomenon. He observes that in the beginning of any pursuit, the novelty provides a massive dopamine rush. Everything is new and interesting. That provides the sunny weather.
But then you hit the wall.
Inevitably, you hit the plateau. Progress becomes microscopic. The excitement evaporates. Maya points out that it is precisely in this valley of boredom where simple, mechanical, daily habits eclipse the need for excitement. Okay, let's play devil's advocate here for a minute. If we all cognitively understand that we need to build the house if we know that reading a chapter of a book will serve us better than doom scrolling on our phones for 2 hours, why is laying the bricks so agonizing?
That is the big question.
Why is the friction so incredibly high to do the thing we genuinely want to do?
To understand the friction, we really have to look under the hood at the neuroscience of comfort versus investment. Maya states it very plainly in the transcript. She says doing the difficult thing feels agonizing because our brains are literally wired to seek comfort.
We are fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming.
Exactly.
Quick happiness. I think that is the exact phrase she uses in the transcript, quick happiness.
Yes, our brains evolved in an environment of extreme scarcity. For early humans, conserving physical and mental energy wasn't laziness. It was a biological imperative for survival.
Right, you didn't know when your next meal was coming.
Exactly. The brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ, so it's naturally designed to seek out immediate, low-effort rewards. Noah lists the modern traps we all fall into. Getting sucked into funny videos for hours, hitting snooze to sleep just a little bit longer, reaching for a highly caloric snack.
We've all been there. I mean, you sit down to do some work at 8 p.m., you open one video, and suddenly it's midnight.
It's so easy to do.
Your brain is just sitting there saying, well, this is fantastic. We are expending 0 calories and we are getting a steady drip of dopamine. Keep doing exactly this.
It is a flawless survival mechanism that has been entirely hijacked by the modern environment. And this is where Emma, the vocabulary teacher in the source material, steps in with a surprisingly deep linguistic intervention.
Oh, this part is so good.
Right. She defines the terms short-term and long-term. She explains that short-term activities provide immediate enjoyment. But then she introduces a critical pivot. She defines the word reward and introduces the verb invest in.
Spending time, energy, or money now in the hope of a better future.
Maya connects Emma's vocabulary directly to the neuroscience. She points out that learning a language or building a business or getting fit does not offer a short-term reward.
The dopamine doesn't arrive instantly like it does with a funny video.
No, the reward is delayed, sometimes by years. You are, quite literally, making an investment. You are paying a heavy neurological cost today for a payout that your primitive brain cannot physically see or understand yet.
I have to pause here because this framing is so liberating. The cultural narrative constantly tells us that if we procrastinate or if we want to lay on the couch, we are fundamentally flawed.
Yes, there's so much guilt associated with it.
We are lazy, we lack willpower, we are just bad at life. But this text is offering a profound kind of grace. Maya explicitly says, instead of fighting our brains, we should understand them.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
We need to stop moralizing our desire for comfort. You aren't lazy. You're just operating a piece of ancient evolutionary hardware that drastically prefers immediate safety over an abstract future goal.
There is immense strategic value in that compassion. When you stop labeling yourself as a failure for wanting a snack instead doing flashcards, you remove the emotional shame from the equation.
And shame is paralyzing.
It completely is. Understanding is actionable. As Maya suggests, you aren't trying to become a flawless, highly productive machine overnight. You're simply trying to teach your ancient, comfort-seeking brain a slightly new routine.
So the million-dollar question is, how do we trick this ancient hardware? Like, if the brain is actively fighting our long-term investments, how do we smuggle the new habits past our own biological security guards?
Well, the English with Ava transcript actually provides a highly tactical, 3-part architecture for bypassing this resistance.
Okay, let's break that down.
The first pillar of this architecture is actually pretty counterintuitive. Maya advises starting ridiculously small.
But wait, how small is ridiculous? Because normally, when people get motivated, they go massive. They decide they're going to change their entire life on a Monday.
And that is exactly why they fail. Noah admits in the text that his instinct is to say, I'm going to study English for 2 hours every evening.
2 hours.
That is a massive spike in cognitive load. The primitive brain looks at that 2-hour commitment, calculates the massive energy expenditure required, and immediately triggers an avoidance response. It says, absolutely not. That is a threat to our energy reserves. Go watch a video.
It's just too steep of a mountain.
So Maya's solution is to shrink the mountain until it's just a pebble. Make the task so microscopic that your brain doesn't even register it as a threat.
Okay, give me some examples.
Instead of 2 hours, she suggests 5 minutes. Or reading a single short paragraph. Or committing to learning exactly 3 new words, listening to just 1 minute of spoken English.
I have to push back on this, though. I mean, 1 minute. If you practice a language for 1 minute a day, you are going to be fluent sometime around the next ice age. How does that actually accomplish anything?
It doesn't accomplish fluency. And that is the secret. You aren't trying to learn the language in that 1 minute. You are trying to wire the habit.
Oh, I see.
You are trying to establish the identity of a person who shows up. The psychological friction of a 1-minute task is practically zero. You cannot formulate a valid excuse to skip 1 minute.
Right, like I don't have 1 minute. That's impossible.
Exactly. By doing it daily, you are physically altering the neural pathways in your brain. You are building the automated routine. Once the routine is cemented, expanding it from 1 minute to 20 minutes is remarkably easy. The hardest part is simply becoming a person who starts.
You are bypassing the brain's alarm system. I
Right.
love that. Okay, so we've shrunk the goal to the size of a pebble. What is the second step in the architecture?
The second step deals with the environment. You have to make the habit incredibly convenient. You have to create the path of least resistance.
This addresses that trap of waiting for the perfect conditions, right? People say, well, I'll start when my desk is clean, or, I'll start when I have an hour of uninterrupted free time.
They're waiting for the universe to remove the obstacles for them.
Right.
Maya argues that the perfect moment is a myth. Waiting becomes a socially acceptable form of procrastination. To beat this, you have to become the architect of your own environment. You have to engineer your physical space so that starting the good habit requires zero thought.
The source gives some fantastic, tangible examples of this. If your goal is to study in the morning, leave your notebook open on your desk the night before. Noah takes it to the extreme.
Oh, the pillow thing.
Yeah, he says he puts his study book literally on his pillow. He physically cannot go to sleep without holding the book in his hands. And, keep your headphones visible and ready. But let me ask you this. Maya mentions these physical placements, but surely self-discipline is deeper than just interior decorating, right? What is actually happening in the brain when the book is on the pillow?
It comes down to the concept of decision fatigue. Every single choice you make during the day, what to wear, what to eat, how to respond to an email, burns a tiny amount of your cognitive fuel. Your prefrontal cortex gets tired. If you decide to study, but you have to figure out where your book is, find a pen, clear off your messy desk, and choose which chapter to start well, you have forced your brain to make 5 separate decisions before you even began the actual task.
So you're exhausted before you start.
By placing the book on the pillow, you remove the decision-making process entirely. You're making the beneficial choice the most convenient one, which, tellingly, is another vocabulary word Emma highlights.
You are eliminating the friction. You are building a slide that tilts you directly into the habit. You just fall into it because it actually takes more effort to avoid it than to just do it.
Exactly. You are weaponizing your brain's desire for ease.
Okay, so our habit is microscopic, and it's sitting right in our way so we can't avoid it. What is the final piece of this structural toolkit?
The third piece is what behavioral psychologists call habit chaining. Maya introduces the concept of anchoring your new, fragile habit to a deeply established daily routine.
Like linking a new chain onto a heavy anchor. The transcript gives the example of practicing English for 5 minutes immediately after making your morning coffee, or reviewing 3 vocabulary words immediately after finishing dinner.
Consider how we normally try to force new behaviors. We set an alarm on our phone for 3:00 p.m. that says, study.
Yeah, and I always ignore them.
Because alarms are external interruptions. They are annoying. When an alarm goes off, your brain views it as an intrusion, and it's incredibly easy to just swipe it away and say, I'm busy.
Right.
Habit chaining bypasses the need for alarms. It takes a routine that is already biologically or structurally cemented into your day, like making coffee, brushing your teeth, or eating dinner, and uses that existing behavior as the trigger.
As Noah points out, you don't need a reminder app. The daily routine itself literally becomes the reminder.
You are essentially piggybacking on existing neural pathways.
Right.
Your brain already knows how to automatically make coffee without thinking. By attaching a 5-minute study session to the end of the coffee routine, you are drafting off the momentum of the existing habit.
So we have the ultimate setup. We have minimized the task to bypass the brain's threat detection. We have engineered our environment to eliminate decision fatigue. And we have changed the task to our morning coffee. We are invincible. We are going to build this house in record time. But then reality intervenes.
It is the unavoidable variable.
We get a terrible flu. We have to fly across the country for a family emergency. The basement floods. We inevitably skip a day. The pristine streak is broken. What happens in that moment? Because in my experience, the moment a window breaks on the house I'm building, I usually just walk away from the construction site entirely and never come back.
You are describing the most dangerous mindset trap in personal development, and the transcript addresses it head-on. Noah categorizes this as the perfect or nothing mentality.
Oh, yeah. Perfect or nothing.
It is this incredibly toxic binary belief that missing a single day immediately invalidates all of the progress you've made. Your brain looks at the broken streak and whispers, well, you failed. The chain is broken. You ruined the perfection, so you might as well just give up completely.
It's such an absurd all-or-nothing way of processing reality. It's either 100% flawless victory or 100% catastrophic failure.
It makes no logical sense, but we all do it.
But Maya completely dismantles this binary trap. She states very firmly that moving forward is always better than standing still. She introduces a massive reframe here. Real, durable self-discipline has absolutely nothing to do with never making mistakes. True discipline is defined by the choice to begin again immediately after you stumble.
If we tie this back to the weather analogy, her perspective makes total sense. A missed day is just a passing thunderstorm. It doesn't mean a tornado leveled your house to the foundation.
Right.
It just means you experienced a stormy afternoon. You wake up the next morning, the sky clears, and you pick up the trowel and lay the next brick.
A huge part of why we fall into that perfect or nothing trap is the sheer, overwhelming scope of our initial ambition. The source issues a strong warning against the danger of trying to overhaul your entire identity in a single weekend.
We all know that feeling.
We all know this manic Sunday night energy. You feel a sudden burst of motivation and you declare, starting tomorrow, I am waking up at 5 a.m., I am running 3 miles, I am drinking a gallon of water, I am reading 30 pages of philosophy, I am doing a lesson in English, and I am meditating for 20 minutes.
Noah calls it out perfectly. He says it sounds incredibly exciting on Sunday night, but it is physically and mentally exhausting by Monday afternoon.
To me, trying to change your whole life at once is like trying to open 50 tabs on an old internet browser simultaneously.
That's a great way to put it.
You aren't just going to slow the system down. The entire computer is going to freeze and crash. You have a limited amount of RAM.
That is a highly accurate representation of cognitive load. Your brain simply does not have the processing power or the glucose reserves to forge 6 completely new behavioral pathways at the exact same time. When the system crashes, the brain reverts to its default programming, which is comfort. Maya's rule is absolute. Choose one habit, only one. Let that single behavior solidify until it requires no conscious effort, and only then do you add the next tab to the browser. Success creates the capacity for more success.
But even if we are only trying to load one single tab, even if we only have one tiny habit to execute, we still hit the wall of procrastination.
Right.
We stare at the task and feel this invisible force field pushing us away.
Oh, definitely.
The transcript actually provides 2 brilliant physics-based hacks for breaking through that force field: the 2-minute trick and the 10-minute trick.
These are essential tools for overcoming the activation energy required to start. When you look at a task, even a small one, your brain can project a sense of overwhelming effort. It says, let's just do this later.
But later is a moving target.
Exactly. Later becomes tonight, tonight becomes tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes next week. The 2-minute trick bypasses this by lowering the stakes. You make a binding contract with yourself. You say, I'm only going to do this for 2 minutes. If I want to stop after 120 seconds, I have full permission to walk away.
Or if you're staring down something you've been actively avoiding all day, like a deeply stressful email or a massive pile of unorganized paperwork, you use the 10-minute trick. You say, I am only going to endure this for 10 minutes.
The profound wisdom here is rooted in behavioral momentum. Sir Isaac Newton's first law of motion applies perfectly to psychology. An object at rest stays at rest, but an object in motion stays in motion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Maya articulates this perfectly when she says that getting started is almost always the hardest part. The sheer amount of mental energy required to take the very first step completely dwarfs the energy required to take the 10th step. Once you cross the threshold of starting, continuing becomes exponentially easier.
Because you're already in motion.
Right. And the brilliance of Noah's observation is that even if you do exercise your right to quit after 10 minutes, you still win. You didn't finish the project, but you kept your promise to yourself. You built a micro foundation of self-trust.
So we've broken down the mechanics, the microscopic starting points, the environmental design, the habit chaining, the mental workarounds for procrastination. But there's a completely different layer to this transcript that we haven't touched on yet, and it might actually be the most vital component of the entire architecture.
The internal dialogue.
Yes, we have to transition into the linguistics of self-discipline. We are shifting from the physical actions we take to the internal silent dialogue that governs those actions. Because the vocabulary we use inside our own heads actively constructs the reality we live in. And this is where Emma, the seemingly simple vocabulary teacher, reveals herself as the secret architect of the entire source material.
It is a masterful piece of hidden curriculum. If you analyze the specific vocabulary words Emma introduces throughout the discussion, they aren't just a random assortment of common English phrases. They form a deliberate, chronological narrative of the psychology of achievement.
Let's actually lay them out because it reads like a three-act play. Act 1 is what we can call the roadblocks. She explicitly teaches words like distracted, procrastinate, tempted, and excuse. These are the evolutionary traps we just discussed. They are the friction.
Then she moves to Act 2, which is the engine. She introduces the exact vocabulary required to overcome the friction. Willpower, effort, consistent, routine. These are the structural materials of the house you are building.
And finally, Act 3 is the destination, the ultimate result of applying the engine to the roadblocks. Skill, goal, progress. It is literally a psychological map disguised as a vocabulary quiz.
That's brilliant.
But knowing the definitions of these words isn't the point, right? The point is how we deploy this language when we speak to ourselves. Let's dig into the self-talk aspect, because I think a lot of people get this entirely backward.
Maya brings up a critical misconception about discipline here. We have this culturally ingrained idea that self-discipline requires us to be an internal tyrant. We believe that to achieve our goals, we have to adopt the persona of a brutal drill sergeant screaming in our own minds.
Yeah, people think being strict means using harsh, punitive, negative language. When they fail, they immediately default to, I'm so lazy, or I never follow through on anything, or I'm always a failure.
Exactly. We somehow believe that if we mentally abuse ourselves loudly enough, we will scare ourselves into being productive. We think shame is a fuel source.
But neurobiologically, it completely backfires.
Completely. As Noah astutely notes in the conversation, those punishing words do not generate action. They generate emotional distress. They make us feel terrible about ourselves. And when a human being feels terrible, what does their brain immediately seek?
Comfort, quick happiness.
Exactly. The brain seeks a dopamine hit to soothe the emotional pain. It seeks the funny videos, the sugar, the distraction. So by verbally punishing yourself for procrastinating, you are actually triggering the exact physiological need for comfort that causes you to procrastinate in the first place.
Wow.
It is a vicious, self-defeating cycle. Maya states with absolute clarity that a kinder, more forgiving internal voice is infinitely more effective at producing behavioral change.
Let's really look at the contrast in the vocabulary here, because it is staggering. There is a massive psychological chasm between looking at a difficult language lesson and saying to yourself, I can't do this, versus saying, I'm still improving.
Words matter.
Or waking up the morning after you break a 30-day habit streak and saying, I'm inherently lazy, versus saying, I missed yesterday, but I will begin again today.
You are describing the fundamental shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. When you say, I am lazy, you are declaring a fixed identity. You are diagnosing yourself with a permanent condition. It implies there's no agency, nothing you can do to alter the outcome.
Right.
However, when you say, I missed today, but I will begin again, you are merely observing an isolated event and immediately following it with an action plan. It is fluid. It acknowledges the stumble without allowing the stumble to define the core identity of the person.
Listener, I really want you to think about how your own internal vocabulary is shaping your reality right now. If the narrator inside your head is constantly reinforcing the idea that you exist in a fixed state of failure, your actions will eventually align with that identity.
You will act like a failure.
But if your internal narrator speaks the language of a fluid, evolving state of growth, you grant yourself the necessary grace to keep building your house, brick by imperfect brick.
That grace is not a weakness. It is the ultimate tactical advantage in self-discipline. Real resilience is not measured by your ability to never fail. It is measured by how gently and how quickly you return to the baseline task after you inevitably do fail.
We have unpacked an incredible amount of psychological framework today, all extracted from what looked like a simple English language lesson. Let's pull all of these threads together as we move to close this out. I want to anchor our synthesis on this truly beautiful resonant analogy that Maya offers right at the end of the transcript.
The tree analogy.
Yes, she weaves everything together. The daily effort, the lack of immediate reward, the patience, by comparing the architecture of self-discipline to the act of planting a tree.
It is the flawless closing image for everything we've discussed. Think about the reality of planting a seed.
Yeah.
You place it in the dirt, you watered it on the very first day, and what is the immediate result?
Absolutely nothing. You are just staring at a patch of wet dirt.
Correct.
Heh.
You do not see a massive oak tree after one day of watering. You don't see it after a week. You might not even see a sprout after a month. If you were operating purely on the motivation of seeing immediate, tangible growth, the quit happiness, you would abandon the garden on day 3.
Right.
But, as Maya beautifully articulates, if you rely on the system, or if you use small, convenient chained habits, powered by compassionate self-talk and rapid forgiveness when you miss a day of watering, you will eventually turn around months or years later, look at that patch of dirt, and be absolutely stunned by the massive canopy that has grown there.
It is the ultimate manifestation of a long-term investment. So we want to relay a direct challenge to you, the listener. At the end of the source material, Noah and Maya leave their audience with a question of the week. We are taking that question and aiming it directly at you right now.
The question is this: what is one small habit that you're going to intentionally build over the next 7 days?
Remember the architectural rules we just laid out? Make it ridiculously small. 5 minutes, 1 page, 1 minute. Make it incredibly convenient. Put the book on your pillow. Remove the decision fatigue. And chain it to an immovable anchor in your day, like your morning coffee or your evening meal.
And most importantly, heed Noah's final piece of advice. Do not compare your sapling to someone else's forest.
That's so important.
The only valid metric of comparison is against yesterday's version of yourself. Every microscopic improvement, every time you choose the long-term investment over the short-term comfort, is a victory worth recognizing.
As we finally wrap up this deep dive into the hidden architecture of self-discipline, I want to leave you with one last provocative thought to chew on. We noted earlier that Maya defines self-discipline as the act of taking care of your future self.
Right.
But if we're honest, that can be a really difficult concept to visualize. We naturally tend to view our future self as just us, but existing on a Tuesday. We assume they will magically possess the energy, the willpower, and the motivation that we currently lack today. But what if you radically changed the lens through which you view that relationship?
How do you mean, change the lens in what way?
I want you to ponder this experiment. What if you viewed your future self not as you, but as a completely separate, distinct human being? Imagine that tomorrow's version of you is someone you deeply, fiercely love. Imagine they are your absolute best friend or your child or a beloved family member who you are entirely, 100% responsible for protecting and providing for.
Wow. That completely alters the emotional stakes of your daily decisions.
Right. Because if you treated tomorrow's version of you with the exact same fierce care, empathy, and protective instinct that you offer the people you love most in this world, how drastically would that alter the choices you make tonight?
It changes everything.
Would you leave them with a sink full of dirty dishes and a stressful, chaotic morning? Would you leave them with a crushing deadline because you wanted to watch 3 hours of videos? Or would you set out the coffee cup, put the book on the pillow, and lay just one single tiny brick so that their house is a little bit warmer and a little bit stronger when the rain inevitably comes? Think about it.
An incredibly powerful question to leave ringing in the air.
That's all for today's deep dive. We will catch you next time.